Hello good people, this is Sam here and we are back for another cookie video. So today I am making red velvet Oreo cookies. This is another new one for me this year, but it actually came together really quickly and really easily, and this will be something that I will incorporate in the future. So I am actually doubling this recipe by Cooking Classy that I will link in the description box. But the recipe makes 12 cookies, I believe, 12 sandwich cookies, and I needed a lot more than that. So I chose to double it to at least get 24 cookies. And we start as always with creaming butter and sugar. Next, I am going to mix together all-purpose flour with cocoa powder, baking soda, baking powder, and salt. So this cooking process was going as good as can be expected if you have seen some of my other cookie videos, except for the fact that a screw flew out of my KitchenAid mixer. I tried to put it back in, it did not go back in, so we just worked without it, and I was hoping that the entire thing wouldn't fall apart. You always want to scrape down the bowl. I know that specifically with KitchenAid mixers, they have a little hump in the middle and things tend to get stuck in the bottom and don't incorporate well. We are adding eggs, and then we are adding a little bit of food coloring. The recipe calls for 1 tablespoon of red liquid food coloring, and I just had short of a tablespoon, but remember I'm doubling this recipe, so I didn't go out and buy anything specific for this, so I had some red gel food coloring. Not exactly sure how much I added, but I just added the whole tube. It might have been around a tablespoon, and the color ended up coming out really well and vibrant. So it's perfectly okay to do that if you don't have liquid food coloring, or mix 2 if you don't have enough. Now I'm slowly incorporating the flour cocoa powder mixture. Even with doubling this recipe, it handles really well in the KitchenAid mixer, even with that screw loose. So that's no concern, at least for this mixer that I have. See here, it doesn't look exactly so well incorporated, so I am going to take it off and just make sure that I scrape all the sides and the bottom so that it mixes up really nice and evenly. I do put it back on the KitchenAid mixer to mix up as well, and this is the final product of the dough. So this is after all of the mixing and scraping. Please excuse my elves in the background. This was Ugly Sweater Day at Olive School, and so the elves Hippolyta and Kimura decided that they would wear ugly sweaters as well. Alrighty, now it is time to break out your well-loved cookie pan and form your dough balls. And I have a glass cup right here because I'm actually going to use those to press this down. So you don't want to press it too flat, but you do want to help in the flattening process because we want a relatively thin cookie. We don't want them to be too puffy. We want them to be very similar to Oreos. Now, these make actually really big cookies. I do end up using less dough once this first batch bakes up to see if I can get the cookies to be smaller. And they're a little smaller, not by much, but they are going to be 2-3 times bigger than an actual Oreo. So here you see when the cookies come out of the oven that they look really like puffy and dome shape on the top. They do flatten out here. So these are all of my cookies finished on the rack drying. I have some stacked on each other. Those were the first batches to come out. Please don't look at my dirty kitchen as I move over onto the other side to make the filling. So remember when I said that I am doubling this cookie recipe, I'm also doubling the filling. And for the actual cookie dough, it worked just fine. Because powdered sugar is a lot lighter, it doesn't work as well doubling the filling. So we have a little bit of an issue once we add everything in here, but it's nothing that we can't just solve and work through. I have homemade vanilla and I love the little specks in there, but if you don't and you want something that is just pure white, just make sure that you don't use the specks or use a bottled vanilla. So I do end up scooping out some of the powdered sugar and just try to work with a smaller amount in the bowl. And as the butter and the vegetable shortening get incorporated into the powdered sugar, I then add back the remainder. Whatever fell out onto the countertop is just going to stay on the countertop until I clean it up. I'm not going to worry about getting that back into the bowl. Once again, the name of the game is to scrape down that bowl. So I scrape it down a few times before running it back in my mixer. And so once it looks nice and smooth, I felt as though mine was a little thicker than how it looked in the recipe. It turned out fine and it tasted delicious, but I probably would have added a little bit more water to mine if I were to do this again. I don't have any fancy piping bags, so I am just going to use a Ziploc bag, cut off a tip, and use that. So this is super thick, so I just end up widening the tip of it just to be able to get it out. Also, it'll just come out a lot faster. I am making these cookies in the night after my kids go to sleep, and I am quite tired myself, so I just want to get through adding all of the filling. This is working with a lot of cookies because remember the recipe is doubled. So I have 40 something cookies. I want to say that I ended up with over 24. I guess you can pause this and count. But I ended up with over the amount of cookies that I wanted. So it was a success and they are super delicious. So thank you for watching this recipe and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye guys.